Welcome to Silent Crime Case, where we delve into some of the most shocking and tragic crimes across America. Today we're taking you to Cypress Creek, a peaceful town nestled in the heart of Northern California, known for its scenic beauty and laid-back lifestyle. But in the early days of May 2020, this tranquil setting became the backdrop for a disturbing crime, a murder that would forever alter the lives of everyone involved. This is the twisted story of a dangerous affair that spiraled out of control, culminating in a shocking and violent death. Lucas Mercer was a 38-year-old man who had, by most accounts, built a stable and successful life for himself in Cypress Creek. As a senior software engineer at a local tech firm, Lucas was highly respected for his expertise and reliability. His calm demeanor, thoughtful nature, and steady work ethic made him the go-to person in his company for complex projects. Lucas had always been a problem solver, someone who could break down challenges and tackle them with precision. His colleagues often spoke highly of him, describing Lucas as the kind of man who would lend a helping hand whenever needed, and his work was nothing short of exemplary. Outside of work, Lucas had a creative side. He was passionate about hiking in the nearby Redwood National Forest, where he found solace and inspiration in nature's beauty. On weekends, he would escape the pressures of the office and spend hours trekking through the towering trees, taking in the fresh, pine-scented air, or painting landscapes inspired by the forest's breathtaking vistas. Lucas had developed a love for art from a young age, and although he wasn't a professional artist, his paintings were admired by friends and family. This was how Lucas balanced his life: meticulous work during the week and creative freedom on the weekends. But more importantly, Lucas was a devoted father to his 2 children from a previous marriage. Despite the challenges of balancing his professional life with the demands of single parenthood, Lucas always made time for his kids. He would take them on nature walks, share stories of the forest creatures, and teach them about the importance of creativity and resilience. To those who knew him, Lucas was a man who had everything: success at work, passion in his hobbies, and love for his children. Yet, despite all outward appearances, Lucas had been harboring a dark secret that would soon spiral out of control. 5 years earlier, Lucas had started an affair with his sister-in-law, Lucas Mercer. The affair had been kept hidden from their family, and while it initially provided Lucas with a temporary escape from the pressures of his daily life, it also filled him with guilt, fear, and self-loathing. Melissa was married to Aaron Mercer, Lucas's younger brother, and over time the affair became a source of deep anxiety for Lucas. He knew it was wrong, and yet he couldn't bring himself to end it. In the months leading up to his death, Lucas had become increasingly uneasy about the affair, particularly about Melissa's obsessive behavior. She had grown more possessive, constantly texting and calling him, despite Lucas's attempts to pull away. He had confided in a close friend that he felt trapped and didn't know how to end the relationship without causing a family rift. Lucas was particularly concerned about Melissa's closeness with her husband Aaron, who had remained oblivious to the affair. Lucas had been looking forward to a weekend getaway with his children in early May. He had rented a cabin near Shady Pines, a quiet lakeside town a few hours from Cypress Creek, where he hoped to spend time with his kids and clear his mind. The trip was meant to be a peaceful break from the complications of his personal life. He had talked about taking his children to visit the infamous Clearwater Hotel, a historic building rumored to be haunted, and perhaps taking them on one of the famous ghost tours. Aaron was a laid-back and easygoing man, known for his relaxed attitude and charm. He initially thought that Lucas might be busy with his children or wrapped up in work, but as the hours passed, Aaron's worry deepened. His gut told him something wasn't right. When Aaron pulled up to Lucas's house, he noticed the front door was slightly ajar, a red flag. Lucas was known for being meticulous about home security, always double-checking that doors were locked and windows were secure. Aaron felt a chill run down his spine. Hesitating for a moment, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The house was eerily silent, save for the faint ticking of the wall clock in the hallway. The lights were off, and the dim glow from the streetlights outside cast long, eerie shadows across the floor. Aaron called out Lucas's name, but there was no response. A deep sense of dread settled over him as he moved further into the house. In the living room, he noticed signs of a struggle: an overturned chair, scattered papers, and a shattered coffee mug on the hardwood floor. His heart raced, and a cold sweat broke out on his forehead as he made his way to the bedroom. There, on the floor beside the bed, Aaron found his brother's lifeless body. Lucas's face was ghostly pale, and a length of rope was still tightly wound around his neck. The sight was so horrifying that Aaron froze in place, Unable to process what he was seeing, his mind went blank, and for what felt like an eternity he stood motionless, staring at his brother's motionless form. The world seemed to spin around him as the reality of what had happened slowly began to sink in. After what felt like an eternity, Aaron snapped out of his shock and pulled out his phone, his hands trembling violently as he dialed 911. His voice was barely audible as he explained to the dispatcher what he had found, struggling to form coherent sentences. The dispatcher tried to keep him calm, instructing him to stay outside until the police arrived. Aaron stumbled out of the house, his legs feeling like jelly beneath him. He collapsed onto the front steps, his mind racing as he tried to make sense of what had happened. His world had just come crashing down, and all he could do was wait for the nightmare to unfold further. Within minutes, the Cypress Creek Police Department arrived at the Mercer home. Detective Sarah Hastings, a 12-year veteran of the force known for her no-nonsense approach and sharp investigative instincts, led the investigation. Hastings had seen her fair share of crime scenes over the years, but something about this case unsettled her from the moment she stepped through the door. As she entered the house, Hastings took in the disarray in the living room, the overturned chair, the broken coffee mug, the scattered papers. The scene looked chaotic, as if someone had put up a fight. But it was the sight of Lucas Mercer's body in the bedroom that confirmed her worst fears. Lucas lay on the floor, a rope still tightly wound around his neck, his face pale and lifeless. There were visible bruises around his neck and face, and his hands bore defensive wounds, evidence that he had fought for his life in his final moments. The crime scene team quickly set to work, photographing the room from every angle and collecting potential evidence. They dusted for fingerprints, took samples from the rope, and carefully bagged the shattered pieces of the coffee mug. Detective Hastings noted the position of Lucas's body and the pattern of the bloodstains on the floor, trying to piece together the events that had led to this tragic scene. To Hastings, this was clearly a murder. The signs of a struggle, the defensive wounds on Lucas's hands, and the manner in which the rope had been tied all pointed to a violent encounter. But not everyone on the team was convinced. Dr. Linda Park, a forensic pathologist with a reputation for thoroughness and attention to detail, was called in to examine. As the investigation progressed, tensions within the police department mounted. The media caught wind of the conflicting theories, and local outlets like the Cypress Chronicle, known for its sensational coverage, ran stories questioning whether the police were pursuing the right leads. The headlines only added to the anguish of Lucas's family, who were desperate for answers. One of the first people of interest in the investigation was Melissa Mercer, Lucas's sister-in-law, and the woman with whom he had been having an affair. Melissa, 35, was known in Cypress Creek for her eccentric personality. She ran a popular YouTube channel called Whispers of the Wild, where she posted videos about her alleged ability to communicate with spirits and fairies. The channel had gained a large following, but it had also attracted a great deal of criticism, with many viewers dismissing her claims as delusional. Melissa's marriage to Aaron had been strained for years. Friends and neighbors had witnessed public arguments between the couple, with Melissa often seen berating Aaron over trivial matters. The affair with Lucas had provided Melissa with an escape from her troubled marriage, but as Lucas began to pull away, her feelings of desperation and betrayal deepened. She had become increasingly obsessed with Lucas, texting him constantly and showing up at his house unannounced. During her interrogation, Melissa was calm, almost eerily so. She admitted to the affair, but insisted that she had nothing to do with Lucas's death. "The spirits told me he was drifting away," she told Detective Hastings, her voice unnervingly steady. "But I would never hurt him. I loved him." Hastings found Melissa's demeanor odd, too composed for someone who had just lost a lover. As she questioned her further, Hastings noticed how Melissa's eyes darted around the room, as if searching for answers or guidance from some unseen force. When pressed about her whereabouts on the night of the murder, Melissa's alibi was vague, and as the questioning continued, she grew increasingly agitated. At one point, she snapped at Hastings, saying, "You don't understand. The fairies told me this would happen, but I didn't want it to. I didn't have a choice." Her strange remarks only deepened Hastings' suspicions. Melissa's obsession with Lucas, coupled with her erratic behavior and the tension in her marriage, made her a prime suspect. But Melissa wasn't the only one under scrutiny. Aaron Mercer, Lucas's younger brother and Melissa's husband, was also a person of interest. Aaron had always felt overshadowed by Lucas's success and stability. While Lucas had built a successful career and a stable home life, Aaron had drifted from job to job, never quite finding his footing. Their sibling rivalry had always been simmering beneath the surface, but the discovery of Lucas's affair with Melissa had deepened the rift between them. When questioned about his relationship with Lucas, Aaron admitted that he had been angry when he found out about the affair, but he insisted that he would never harm his brother. "Yeah, I was pissed off, but he was my brother," Aaron told Detective Hastings during his interrogation. "We had our differences, but I wouldn't hurt him." Despite his words, Hastings couldn't shake the feeling that Aaron was hiding something. His alibi for the night of Lucas's death didn't hold up, and his nervous demeanor during questioning only fueled her suspicions. The investigation also turned its focus to Claire Mercer, Lucas's ex-wife. Although their divorce had been amicable on the surface, there were lingering tensions between them. Claire had always been a controlling figure in Lucas's life, particularly when it came to their children. She had openly disapproved of his affair with Melissa, and there were rumors that she had confronted him about it in the weeks leading up to his death. When Claire was brought in for questioning, she was composed but defiant. Detective Hastings and her team arrived at the scene and retrieved the fabric, which was later identified as part of a shirt. The bloodstains matched Lucas's DNA, and the presence of the shirt in the trash suggested that someone had tried to dispose of key evidence. This discovery ruled out suicide and pointed to a violent struggle that had taken place in the moments leading up to Lucas's death. Forensic experts were called in to analyze the shirt and the bloodstains further. The presence of the shirt, along with the defensive wounds on Lucas's hands, confirmed what Hastings had suspected all along. Lucas had been murdered, and the person responsible had tried to cover it up. With this new evidence in hand, Hastings and her team revisited their list of suspects. The timing of the shirt's disposal suggested that the killer was someone close to the family, someone who had access to the house and knew the family's routines. All eyes turned back to Melissa Mercer. On July 15, 2020, after weeks of investigation, Melissa Mercer was arrested and charged with the murder of Lucas Mercer. The trial began in early 2021, and as the details of the case were laid bare in court, it became clear that Melissa's obsession with Lucas had driven her to commit the unthinkable. The prosecution painted a picture of a woman consumed by jealousy and desperation, unable to let go of the man she loved. Melissa's erratic behavior, her obsession with the supernatural, and her growing instability in the months leading up to the murder were central to the prosecution's case. Melissa's defense attorney argued that she had been suffering from severe mental illness and was not fully responsible for her actions. They pointed to her YouTube channel and her bizarre claims about being influenced by spirits and fairies as evidence of her deteriorating mental state. But the jury was unconvinced. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, Melissa Mercer was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The trial of Melissa Mercer was one of the most closely followed cases in Cypress Creek's history. The courtroom was packed with onlookers, journalists, and members of the Mercer family, all eager to see how the case would unfold. Melissa's defense centered on her fragile mental state, claiming that her obsession with the supernatural had led her to experience a psychotic break. Experts testified that her delusions had influenced her actions in the weeks leading up to Lucas's murder. When Melissa took the stand, she tearfully described how she believed spirits had compelled her to act, a claim that generated some sympathy, but was ultimately overshadowed by the evidence against her. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Stephen Rodriguez, took a hard-hitting approach, arguing that Melissa's actions were motivated by jealousy and rage, not mental illness. Rodriguez painted a picture of a woman who, driven by obsession, lashed out when she felt Lucas slipping away from her. The forensic evidence, combined with witness testimony, was enough to convince the jury that the murder was premeditated and brutal. On February 10, 2021, after 3 weeks of trial and just 3 days of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. Melissa Mercer was found guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom fell silent as the decision was read, and Melissa sat motionless, her fate sealed. For Lucas's family, the verdict was bittersweet. While they were relieved that justice had been served, the deep sadness of losing a beloved family member remained. Lucas's parents, who had attended every day of the trial, were visibly emotional as they left the courtroom. Aaron Mercer, Lucas's younger brother, struggled with the weight of his wife's betrayal and his brother's death, a burden that would likely haunt him for the rest of his life. Melissa was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. As for Melissa, she was transferred to a maximum security prison, where she continued to claim that supernatural forces had driven her to commit the murder. Mental health professionals noted that these beliefs were likely a coping mechanism, allowing her to avoid fully confronting her actions. The Mercer case served as a stark reminder of how secrets and obsessions can spiral out of control, leading to devastating consequences. Though Cypress Creek eventually moved on, the pain of Lucas's loss would forever be a part of those closest to him. Thank you for joining us on this episode of True Crime Case Files. If you'd like to hear more real-life murder mysteries, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Have any thoughts about this case, or a case you'd like us to investigate? Leave a comment below. Stay safe, true crime case solvers. True crime.